Behave yourselves! Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to episode 2 of Monday Movies, where I am joined by Tom Gibbsy, also known as Better Call Gibbsy, also known as Gibbsy! Gibbsy, how you
That's
doing?
me. What's up? I'm doing pretty good, thank you, Stan. What about yourself?
All good, all good. Ready to talk about more of the RoboCop franchise with you, with arguably the best RoboCop sequel, which is kind of damning with faint praise, but when it comes to RoboCop 2, Gibbsy, where do you stand on it?
RoboCop 2 was. Usually, I'm not a big fan of sequels to films that I thought were great on their own. This one, I didn't enjoy this one as much as I did RoboCop, but I still thought it was quite a good film.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it in various different places.
I think it goes without saying that RoboCop 2, what makes it quite a fun film for me, with a lot to say actually, is that it isn't trying to be the original. I don't know if you got that sense when you watched it, but RoboCop 2 for me is a sequel that actually comments on being a sequel and almost being the victim of its own success, as Duncan Casey of Valverde would say. I love that RoboCop 2 is literally about RoboCop 2, and he's bigger, he's clunkier, and ultimately he's nowhere near as efficient as RoboCop.
That's very true. Yeah, I liked how in RoboCop you had that sort of that theme of loss of identity within RoboCop, and he's gradually regaining that as the film goes on. With RoboCop 2, that sort of isn't there, and it's got a noticeably different theme, which I quite like. You know, they're not trying to repeat the same sort of story directives through RoboCop 2 as they are in RoboCop 1.
Yes, and that's a good point, because there's this great scene, almost one of the best scenes in the whole series, is when he obviously meets his wife, doesn't he? Which is a kind of really well-handled scene. There's, aside from a few musical cues, that scene is completely diegetic, so it's just the dialogue and the sounds of ambience in the background. It's a really haunting scene, and you can kind of see it in Murphy's eyes that he's basically got to sell his soul to OCP and kind of let his humanity be squashed in favour of the other corporation. So it kind of sets up a really dour note for the film, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And there are a couple of sad moments within RoboCop, but this was one of a couple that I found within RoboCop 2, where now that Alex Murphy doesn't really exist anymore, RoboCop's got to sort of come to terms with that in a way.
Yeah, and I think I've read the RoboCop 2 novelization, which is kind of a sad thing to say, but I think this is where RoboCop 2 does suffer for me, and it misses a lot of the marks, in my opinion. There's a lot of emotional stuff they could have probably done with it that kind of falls to the wayside, because that scene is really just designed to push Murphy's kind of emotional subplot out of the way, really, isn't it? In favour of just being kind of a cool shoot 'em up action RoboCop sequel, really. And I think as an action film, I think it's fantastic. The stop motion is incredible. But you're right, it doesn't really have the heart and soul of the original, does it?
Not as much so, no. There was a noticeable drop, but I think it retained some still. Enough for me to enjoy it throughout the entirety of its duration.
Yes, it's actually a really entertaining film from start to finish. I think there's so much to enjoy about it, and one of my favourite characters is actually the mayor. I love the mayor in that film.
Yeah.
The guy who's just completely opposed to OCP and the old man and his kind of taking over and controlling of the police force and making them go on strike. It's a great performance. He's just constantly going, "Fuck you, you senile old bastard! Fuck you!"
Yeah.
It's so over the top. And can we talk about Nuke?
Yes, Nuke.
Nuke.
Where is
it? Drug
Yeah. All-time favorite. You know, I'm a Nuke addict now.
Gibbsy, exposed.
I won't tell you where it's made. I don't know. I only know
Officer Duffy. Officer Duffy, you are a corrupt cop. Good old Officer Duffy. But yeah, sorry, were you saying something before I went off about Nuke?
I wanted to briefly talk about Fax.
Dr. Juliet Fax. Good topic.
Fax. Yeah.
Why is that, Gibbsy?
Well, the scene that with Fax in that stood out to me the most was the scene where, spoiler alert, where you've got Kane, the sort of the kingpin of this Nuke distribution, and who's been put up to a hospital bed and is due to have Fax is trying to extract his brain. Instead of having a cop's sort of living embodiment within a cyborg, Vax has instead chosen the mind of a criminal, an insane one at that.
Yes.
With this ideal of immortality that they're looking for. When I was watching that scene where you've got the Kane's brain surgery taking place, where it's being extracted. But throughout that and the scene before that, where Kane's sort of life support gets disconnected, I got some really psychotic vibes from Fax. Then saying, "Oh, everything's fine as long as your brain stays intact."
Yeah. Hurry up, guys! We've only got 6 minutes before the brain goes. It's a really horrible scene, isn't it?
Yeah, it was not an easy one to watch for me. And when the extraction's going off, or when the extraction's going through, the Foley sound used for things just like the extraction instruments.
With the head as well.
Yeah, the head just
very horrifying, actually.
It is, but I love the fact that I cringed so much when I was watching it, because it sort of gave me that mindset of being like in a dentist's chair or something like that.
Yeah, sure.
It's a weird comparison. It's closest I can relate to in real life, anyway. Is being in like a dentist's chair when you've got the instrumentation coming on like a drill,
Well, because it's a very clinical scene, isn't it? It's obviously set in a hospital ward of some sorts, where Kane's being operated on to save his brain in 6 minutes' time. And yeah, that's a really good point. It has these weird emotional moments that actually really horrify you. And I've heard RoboCop 2 described as mean-spirited in its violence, and I think that's actually a very fair not criticism, but actually for me it's a positive, because when Officer Duffy gets gutted like a pig for ratting out on Hobb and Kane, he gets sliced right down the middle of his chest, and it's so horrifying. And poor Hobb, his head is turned to make sure he's watching, and you go, "Oh no!"
Yeah, the poor little child. Hobb's got to be what, like a 10, 11-year-old, and
I think so. Yeah.
You just see this kid doing all sorts of things. He's operating for a drug cartel boss. He's given the use of a machine gun in a scene and things like that. You just think
strangles Lewis as well with chicken wire or something.
Yeah, and you just think, when I was 11 years old, I wasn't doing any of that. I was playing with like Power Rangers and things like that.
Weren't we all, Gibbsy? Weren't we all? Yeah, that's a good avenue to take as well, because Hobb for me is such a wonderful character, and I think this is definitely a product of Frank Miller's writing, who obviously wrote Dark Knight Returns and Sin City and Batman Year One and many other cool comic books. It's so weird to have a kid aspiring to be a drug lord, but RoboCop 2 makes it work, and it's kind of funny.
They've managed to do it. Fair play.
Yeah, it's so wonderful when he's in that moment where he obviously entices the mayor to come down to his secret place to talk about the deal, and Hobb turns around in his little chair, and because he's only 11 years old or 10 and he's got really small legs, his legs don't touch the ground. It's so funny.
That was good. Yeah, it's crime boss. A crime boss that's nowhere near the proper level of maturity you'd expect, typically.
Yeah, but I love. Yeah, he's just completely unaware that he's 11 years old, and even when he's kind of almost abusing Angie in the car when Kane is dying, basically saying, "You work for me, bitch," or something like that, and he's got the nuke capsules, and he says, "You want this, don't you?"
Yeah,
he's such a great character. He controls really well.
Another scene that I wanted to discuss was during the sort of the presentation meeting within the was it the movie theater that they'd done it in?
Yeah, it's kind of like
the unveiling of RoboCop 2, as it were, when Kane has been embodied into the cyborg at this state, and he's when he's got that container of nuke that's being on show or something like that, and where Kane starts to lose control, and you can you see there the sort of the human portion of Kane start to be unveiled, as was similar with the first movie RoboCop, where it's Kane's addiction to the drug that he's selling on that comes through above all else, above all the protocols he's been programmed with and things like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a lovely kind of sense of irony and pathos in a way, or is it bathos? I can't remember. I don't want to try and be some sort of intellectual, but
Either way, I don't know if I'd know what that means. I've got
yeah,
no idea.
but it is definitely kind of dramatic irony in that the very thing he's created, which is Nuke, obviously is the very thing he's dependent upon when he becomes Robo-Kane. And yeah, they even start to hint. They even start to hint at that as well with Juliet Fax kind of with the massive cylinder forcing it towards him, and his little claw comes out and tries to grab it, and you think someone's still addicted. And I think where the original film was all about drugs with Clarence Boddicker and the Wrecking Crew gang, and obviously the distribution of cocaine, RoboCop 2 double downs on drugs, doesn't it? In kind of a corny, over the top way, but it actually kind of works.
Yeah, it's tackled not just the manufacturing and distribution of drugs, but how the Kingpin's addiction to the drug he's created is affecting his state of mind.
It's really funny. And when it comes to Robo-Kane, as a design, greatly compares to Ed 209, doesn't it? Because Phil Tippett, who did the stop motion for both, it has stated out loud that the design for RoboCop 2 is all about making it more complicated than Ed 209, because it was really easy for people to replicate Ed 209 in their own little copies. But RoboCop 2 is this kind of monster of a creature, isn't it? It's got so many little bits and pieces to it that you could never really imagine recreating it, could you?
Yeah, with that construction, the way that RoboCane had been constructed, I mentioned in the previous episode about how with RoboCop there was still a human sort of element to the suit, and how that's almost not there with RoboCane. You don't think, that's a man inside there, just from looking at it, just from a first glance.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because you try and remind yourself that Kane is in there, and the only real thing you get is the nuke addiction. But aside from that, what do you think of the hologram as well, of when the screen comes out and it shows this kind of really haunting face?
Yeah, when the brain's being extracted once again.
No, this is when he's obviously become RoboCop 2, and whenever when he goes on the rampage in the warehouse, he kills all the people. And when he sees his girlfriend Angie, he lets his face be shown, doesn't he, on like a hologram screen?
Yeah. Oh,
that creepy.
That was. Oh no, I remember that now. Goodness me, that was
haunting, right?
Yeah, I remember it more vaguely from when Kane's brain is being crushed by RoboCop.
Yes, of course.
He shows it again there, but this time it's this horrific, distorted, the 2D image of Kane's face. It's being stretched across the screen. The colors are flickering, and it's
it's really creepy, isn't it? There's something about it that's just unsettling and nasty.
Yeah. I suppose that's how I'd react if my brain was being crushed as well, though.
Yeah, exactly.
But even in that scene where you've got Kane and Angie together, it's not very, despite the fact that it is a human brain that's been imported into a cyborg, it doesn't feel very human.
Yeah, it's very kind of there's like an emotional distance to that character, isn't there?
Yeah, I kind of got a vibe from. Have you seen Red Dwarf?
I haven't, no.
Okay. I kind of got a vibe from the computer from Red Dwarf, where it's just got a 2D face that shows up, but nothing really more. You'll need to watch Red Dwarf, Stan.
I do need to, but one question I have is, what came first, RoboCop 2 or Red Dwarf? When was Red Dwarf made?
I can do a quick Google search if you'd like to find out.
Go on. While you do that, I will mention the fact that one of the best sequences in RoboCop 2, and I'm sure the audience will agree, is where he gets his prime directives wiped out and the corporation decides to be excessively liberal and just bog his memory with about 400 prime directives. What did you think of that scene?
That was I remember that scene now, just thinking
amazing,
about it.
Right?
Yeah,
amazing.
that was impressive, and I remember the impact it had when RoboCop and Lewis are taking a drive. This is before the "Thank you for not smoking" scene.
Yeah.
Where you've got RoboCop saying, the speed limit in this area is a strict 35 miles per hour.
Yeah. Hit the gas, Murphy.
Yeah. And I sort of got the feeling that RoboCop has sort of become very much sort of an old man or a rule stickler in response to that. And you can really see I got such an old man vibe when RoboCop comes out of the car and kneels down to the kids and sort of tells them off about the fire hydrant that's leaking. Sort of, tut kids, don't do this, it's wasting water.
Kick me on the back of his suit.
That was good. And the fact that he has no idea it's there too.
Yeah, it's such a funny scene. What is it? Waste makes haste. A
Waste
rolling
makes
stone is worth two in the bush.
Yeah, I was just like, who talks like that?
Exactly.
This is the new directives kicking in.
Yeah, one of my favorite.
Sorry, I've had a look at Red Dwarf, season 1, 1988.
1988. Okay, so RoboCop 2 came 2 years afterwards. So maybe RoboCop 2 was inspired by it. So,
perhaps. Never know.
Fair play, Gibbsy. You have stumped me completely. Checkmate. One of my favourite quotes in RoboCop 2 is where they discover the Little League team robbing from the tech store.
Yes.
That the coach is trying to fight off Robo, and then Robo writes to a dead corpse and then says, "I'm having trouble."
Yeah, that's just. I just wasn't quite. I wasn't just expecting him to say something like that at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking, insert cool line here, perhaps, but there's. I'm having trouble.
It's great. It's kind of human, isn't it? It's the whole idea that with RoboCop, no matter how much you try and squash his humanity down, it will always bubble up to the surface again, won't it? And you really do see that in little bits here and there in RoboCop 2. And I think the more I think about RoboCop 2, the more the heart and soul of the film for me is about not being able to replicate the same success twice. And I think you can definitely see that being commented upon in RoboCop 2. It's just with RoboCop 2 alone. It's bigger, it's clunkier, but ultimately it doesn't do the same as RoboCop, does it? It's nowhere near as efficient.
Yeah, there's a clear distinction and a clear difference between the two films, even just between the different sound effects they use. Well, the music and the sound was one of the things I was mainly picking up on with RoboCop 2 upon my first watch, and even just I noticed different quality in the sound, for example, and things like that, and just that alone was enough to give me the feeling of it being different from the first film. It's still being a sequel though, nonetheless.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point, because sound-wise as well, I completely agree with you. But we've got to get into the music, because it's not Basil Poldoris, it's Leonard Rosenman. Where do you stand on the change in the RoboCop theme and the complete change and restructuring of the score for RoboCop?
I think that it didn't give. One of the things I liked about the original RoboCop score was that there was, RoboCop had that heroic motif, which would appear in various different tracks across the score. And I didn't get that much of a heroic feeling from this one. Yeah. Just wasn't there.
It's a good point. I think the kind of RoboCop march for number 2, the do-do-diddle-do, for me it's quite iconic at this point, because I've seen RoboCop 2 way too many times. So it kind of it gets in your psyche after a while. But the flip side, Gibbsy, is maybe we'll talk about RoboCop 3 soon. Wink, wink. But RoboCop 3 brings Basil Poldoris back, so the music is right, but it feels flat because the story isn't great. Whereas RoboCop 2 has a better story, has better characters, it has something to say, and while the music isn't the same, at least it gets the other elements right.
Yeah.
RoboCop 3. All right. So, for years. Here we go. Well, we're going to talk about that next week. But when it comes to the sequels, people tend to put RoboCop 2 and 3 in the same category of quality. Ooh. And you just think, how dare you? RoboCop 1 and 2, they go together. RoboCop 3, you should completely discard. That film's horrible. But at least RoboCop 2's got something to say.
RoboCop 3, but yeah, as you said, by far, RoboCop 3 is the one that you'd separate. I mean, on Netflix, when all 3 of the films are up there, you've got the cover arts for RoboCop 1 and 2, which look finished and look like they've been properly worked. RoboCop 3 just looks like it was a picture from a comic book. You've got the background, and you've got RoboCop's this full body portrait just sort of cut and paste on there, like it was just like lazily photoshopped or something like that.
Yeah, the Netflix thumbnail for RoboCop 3 is him doing that, isn't it?
Doing what? Sorry, I've not got
Doing,
the team chat open. There we are.
it's like that, isn't it?
Yeah, he's pointing at it, but it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like it works with the background.
Yeah, RoboCop 2 has something to say as well, and I think that's what separates it from 3. Is there's that wonderful scene which everyone has talked about to death, but you've got to mention it in a review of RoboCop 2, and that's the failed RoboCop 2 test sequence. What do you think about
Oh yes, announcing RoboCop 2.
Ladies and gentlemen, I proudly present
RoboCop 2, and you've got the old man who's just there constantly looking disappointed, just
yeah,
oh god.
and that great moment where the doctor gets shot in the clip, and then it cuts to him in real life going,
yeah,
great.
Oh
Yeah, it kind of perfectly sets up the fact that corporate mentality makes no sense in RoboCop 2, because you've got a successful formula with RoboCop as a character, haven't you? And I love that for inexplicably no reason they're trying to create a RoboCop 2. It's
yeah.
Why is it necessitated? You don't need it, but I love that they're doing it and thinking that they need to do it, and so they just create these horrible.
They're desperately trying. Yeah, you know, you can't really industrialize the proper manufacturing of cyborgs that have been implemented with real life human emotions and connections, because ultimately they're not going to want to be around for very long, and nor were the prototypes, as we saw.
Yeah. That great one where the skeleton takes his helmet off and goes, It's so great. I think what makes it fun. Oh, sorry. I think what makes it funny as well is it cuts to the old man doing this, and you can just hear crashes and bangs and booms off screen. It's hilarious.
The old
Such a great.
As if what have they done?
Yeah. And I know we touched upon the old man in our RoboCop review, and you can't talk about RoboCop 2 without speaking about the old man. What a character in this film!
Yeah, I love the way he's played.
Yeah.
What's the actor's name again?
Dan O'Halloran.
Dan O'Halloran. That's the one. Yeah.
He's also in Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, guys. If you haven't watched that film, highly recommend it.
But I love that there's sort of, in a way, there's not a lot of comedy being brought into the role. How he plays it so seriously, and it works so well.
He's so funny. We started this review with "Behave yourselves," which for me is the line of the film. He's talking to 2 robot cops, and he thinks it's within his right to tell them to behave,
as if they're children or something like that.
Yeah,
but no,
like it's chastising children.
Yeah,
this could look bad for OCP Johnson. Scramble the best spin team we have. Do you know what? One of my favourite moment in RoboCop 2, aside from behave yourselves, has to be when. Is it Johnson? Johnson walks into the old man's kind of little tropical room, you might say, and the camera pans left and reveals the old man sat in the little hot tub.
Oh yes.
It's just so funny. It's such a lovely example of filming right there. The fact that it just pans and reveals him there, and then Juliet Fax comes out, and it kind of hints that they've been doing it, to say the least.
Something's been going on.
Yeah. I'm taking the limelight, Gibbsy, but I absolutely love that scene. It just sums up the kind of sense of humour of RoboCop 2, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
It's such a fun scene. But we are coming to an end.
My cheeks hurt, that's all.
What, from smiling so much at the old man?
Yeah,
exactly.
I love the old man.
Yeah, he's so great. But yeah, guys, that brings an end to our episode 2 on, conveniently, RoboCop 2. It's as if we planned this, Gibbsy, right?
As if, yes. If you see it, we're wearing the same clothing. It's not because we've got bad hygiene, I promise. We've just been doing back-to-back recordings. That's all that is. Before you raise any questions.
Yes, with Gibbsy looking like a bookworm right now with his glasses.
How's this for you?
You don't look natural. Put the glasses back on.
All right then. The glasses back on. Here we go.
What a weird, strange, bizarre note to end on. But anyway, Gibbsy, where can we find you?
Indeed. Well, you can find me predominantly on my YouTube channel. If you're looking for music and audio-related things, I regularly upload them. If you go to TGMA Productions, I'm sure Stan will put a link to the channel in his description, and I'll do the same for Stan's within mine.
Thank you very much. Yes, please check out Gibbsy's music. He is a fantastic aspiring composer in the works, and I, like Gibbsy, am trying out with music. I've got some films on my channel. If you want to see more of this content, please subscribe. It helps out the channel, and it means we know that we've got a built-in audience who love weird chats from weird parts of our rooms, talking about strange movies. So guys, thank you thank you for watching. Let us know what you think of RoboCop 2 as well, because it's a film that warrants endless discussion. I could talk about it forever. So thank you for your time, guys. We shall see you next time.
Indeed. Take care.